Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special report on the equinox. This particular equinox is one that I think is quite important in our overall journeys. And I know I talked a little bit about this in the introduction to Love Evolution. So if you want to hear about it from the perspective of Venus and Pluto, definitely take a listen to that. But I just wanted to kind of summarize the moment of the ingress of the sun into the sign of Libra and what these cardinal accesses represent from an astrological perspective. So we have, um, the cardinal cross is the initiation of seasons. It's the beginning of a new season and thus a new cycle. And the culmination or the end of a transitional cycle. So the Virgo time period is the transitional cycle into the fall in the northern hemisphere or the spring in the southern hemisphere, right? It's a transitional energy. And here in the northern hemisphere, it's an autumnal energy, right? Virgo is about going back to school, and the earth starts to really reveal itself as being in a change of seasons. So summer, the peak of summer, which is fixed Leo season, is waning, and we might have some Indian summer type of energies where there's warmth and then cool days and then a little, maybe some rain and then warm and then cool. But there's this, back and forth, right? Immutability. And that mutability also came during the Mercury retrograde cycle, which was in Leo and then also in the sign of Virgo. And that cycle also was helping us to resolve past dynamics, Mercury, Virgo dynamics, communication dynamics, dynamics in which we were, not being seen or understood in the ways that we desired to be seen and understood, or maybe, quite strongly the dynamics of the past coming up and getting in the way with the future that we long to create. And here we are with this sun ingress into Libra. Libra is a Venus ruled sign. We have Venus at the last degree of Libra, ending her cycle through this time. We just began the class series Love Evolution, completely devoted to Venus through the signs through the remainder of the year. And this was a big and important start to our class series, the Venus and Libra archetype. And Venus in Libra is really about discovering the self, the sense of ourself, our values, who we are, through the other, right? And we discover relationship also through the other, right? We compare and contrast relationship, seeking to get our needs met, both emotional, mental, physical, intimate, right? In all the different ways, in all the different relationships. So I'm not just speaking exclusively about romantic relationships. These can be business relationships. They can be friendships. They can be familial relationships. In all those ways, we're always navigating the same things on a certain level. And of course, wherever power dynamics have come back into play, where we have had to suppress our emotional needs in order to maintain relationship, in order to maintain the peace, in order to, and Mars is really challenging us through the sign of Cancer to feel the anger or the frustration, the feelings as an indication of something that is vulnerable, that is inside of us, that needs its expression in relationship, but also needs to be felt, right? And sometimes that can happen in relationship quite easily, and other times it's quite challenging for feelings to feel safe enough to be felt, right? And so as we have this equinox, and the equinox is a time when the sun stands still at these cardinal gates, right? the fall, it's entering Libra, the spring, it's entering Aries, but there is a pause. There's a heavy pulse in the air that then is initiating us into a new cycle. And what I've been thinking about in terms of this cycle is very much like Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, right? There is a call of the soul. There's a desire that we have. There's some feeling that we have that something is wanting to happen to us, through relationship. And then we have sort of the blocks to that, the past, the places where we maybe don't believe that we're worthy of that, or have had a sense of guilt or shame or inferiority, the places in which we've been sort of stuck in past patterns and dynamics, and they're all pushing their way up. They're all coming to the surface because on some level we're being called into a new frontier. And in order to do that, in order to really be able to find our way into a new relationship or a new pattern or a new way of feeling or a new way of expressing, we have to answer the call and journey into the unknown. And we have to do it in a way where we don't actually know how it's going to turn out, right? There's a Jupiterian element of with Jupiter and Gemini of exploring our thoughts, our ideas, our belief systems, exploring beyond the limits of those things and really taking ourselves into a new place, but not without some capacity to actually feel how unfamiliar what we might desire is from our current structures, from our current, life and design, and current conditions. And be more in this place of open-mindedness and exploration of like, well, what would that mean for me? What would trying this on, or what would doing that? And we sort of do that when we meet people in relationship, especially like where we meet someone new and you're curious about them and you're trying to, learn more. And maybe they have very differing ideas or opinions. And Libra might be really trying to find what's the common ground, what is the similarity, what's this the same that we have. And at the same time, there might be ways in which at this equinox, with this initiation, of course, it's happening in between two eclipses. We just had the Pisces full moon lunar eclipse, and we are moving towards October 2nd, which will be our Libra new moon eclipse. And the Libra new moon is happening on the south node, which in a way is a sort of contradiction of energies, right? We think of new moons as new beginnings, and we think of the south node as releasing or the past. But what's a new moon on the south node, and we might even look at that eclipse just to give us a context of it, it's essentially a new beginning relative to culminating the past that allows us to bring forward the fruits of the past. It's not like everything from the past is lost once we let it go, right? Imagine you leave a relationship, a long-term relationship, you lose a family member, you end a job that where in that job you knew yourself. In that relationship, you knew yourself to be someone or something in context to that other thing, right? So in your marriage, you knew yourself to be a husband or a wife in context to that relationship. In your job, you knew yourself to be in a particular role, and that was familiar and it was safe and it allowed you in a way to play into patterns that were familiar, even if they were uncomfortable, even if they weren't necessarily what you desired, right? I remember when I sort of left corporate America and I left the familiarity of having paycheck and when I was a financial advisor, like I knew all the language of that. I knew the conditions of that. I knew what was expected of me. I knew how to perform well, and I was good at my job. I was, one of the top advisors in my firm because I knew how to relate to people and I knew enough, I had enough of a solid background and education and training that I was confident in what I knew. But on a soul level and the desires of my soul, that job and that role started to out. Um, I had a client one day say to me, Michelle, it sounds to me like you've outgrown your pot. And it was like that feeling of like, I knew there was something more for me. I knew I was growing into something. I had no idea at the time that astrology would become my main focus or having a family, like the my exclusive focus had been on this Capricorn um reality, right? And being and functioning within the structures of the corporate investment industry and all of that, and having a solid, Taurus base of knowledge. And when I left that career, all I knew was that I had a passion, which I had been cultivating for astrology. I had a deep love for it. And I had deep desires for partnership and marriage and growing my family and all these things that were not at all on the horizon for me at the time. And so it was a quite destabilizing experience, right? There was a big mutable period where I was in a lot of fear and I was figuring out how to take care of myself and financially provide as a single mother and, doing all these different things that really triggered the nervous system. And what I learned from that time period was that the only thing on a bottom line that I could do and could rely upon was my relationship to God and my soul's deep desire for whatever was next, what was new, for what was calling me. And they didn't necessarily match up to the existing external conditions, but they were always there. They were deep within me. And so then I went through this initiation, right, which ultimately led me to where I am today, and that you are even listening to me as an astrologer and doing this work is a testament to listening to both of those core guides, the inner guide of my soul and the ultimate guide of my creator. And it has not been easy. It has been tumultuous at times, emotional, stripping, humbling. It has been, and I've been really relating this equinox to that hero's journey because we have Venus really on the cusp of entering Scorpio, which I think of as her journey into the underworld. She starts the journey, she goes in through relationship. She has to leave behind what is known and familiar. She has to leave behind the conditions and face this stripping away from the inside. And that stripping away, it doesn't have to be painful, although it often is. Sometimes it can be liberating. And if we're in that excitement of the new, if we're in the frame of mind of curiosity and trust and openness to life itself, then it can feel so empowering. Part of the Pluto journey, while can have these sort of like double face of a coin. One face is like the disempowerment of just being plummeted by the darkness of transformation. And the other side is the empowerment of being pulled by the soul to the new becoming from within that is actually connecting us so much more deeply to who we truly are. And who we're becoming is always a reflection of who we truly are. We can't become something that we are not. And I deeply believe that at the core of all souls, we are love. And there is like this outer shell of conditioning and world and experience and trauma that we're having. And some of us consciously choose to go through the process of breaking it apart and coming to know ourselves more deeply. And other people move through their whole life not wanting to touch that, not wanting to go there, not being, and so to each soul has their own journey. But here we are at this initiation point of Venus where she is really calling us down into that place of Scorpio. And Scorpio is death and rebirth and transformation, but it's also the reclamation of that power through the process of birth, right? It's like in birth, in the process of physical birth, labor, there's a point in which they often say for women that is the transition to when the baby is actually emerging, when one feels as though I cannot do this anymore. I do not want to do this. I have no strength. I have no capacity. And that's when you know you're really close. Like you're really close to having this beautiful birth and emergence, because there's some part of the self that is identified with being in the past, that's being stuck, that's identified with the pain and the struggle, that is dying to the moment of this emergence. And then as soon as the baby is born, unconditional love, surrounds this emergence, right? And as soon as we are actually in living in the part of our soul that had been desired to be reborn in this year, especially, the more we feel that sense of unconditional love and acceptance of our path, right? And it, even if it is a humbling process, there is a knowing that this was not all for naught. It was really exactly what we were needing in order to become who we have become. And so in that way, no matter what happens with a relationship or a job, like I left that financial job and I still took all the skills and gifts with me. And I left behind the pantyhose and the struggle, you know, and needing to keep up with the stock market. And I left behind the security, the financial security of a six-figure paycheck and all the good things that, come with the health benefits and all of that. But it wasn't to say that I left behind those things and then didn't have care or provision. Like I have come to realize that somehow, some way, even when we're at our lowest point financially, as long as we're still breathing, we come through it. And it's almost revealed to me kind of the ridiculousness of doing a financial plan, because I've never met a person alive who totally ran out of money, like, and was not, it just, yes, you can exhaust resources or you can mismanage money and end up running through it quite quickly, or economic conditions can create an impact. And I do think that that's happened for many of us. But the soul always survives its conditions. And if we're listening to that part, that deeper part of the soul, and in a way surrendering to it, there is something that happens in that initiation that is a necessary part of who we're becoming. So with this equinox, we have the power of becoming something new in relationship. And that is through our understanding of the relationship to ourselves, through our awareness of our inner dialogue, our inner emotional reality. It is through the curiosity and the capacity to be open-minded and to explore our feelings and to be willing to break through into what is unknown in a way, and to be initiated by that, to consciously choose that, and to start newly into a place of healing. And what's interesting to me is that this equinox follows, is followed by uh, a solar eclipse on October 2nd. So I'll just share that with you, which is the new moon that I was talking about on the south node. We still have Mars in Cancer with this eclipse. We have Mercury in the sign of Libra, and Venus and the south node of Venus have both moved into Scorpio. So Venus is beyond her square, which she perfects just after that equinox to Pluto, and she's in her underworld journey. And in our class series, Love Evolution, we'll be working on Venus and Scorpio in this time period. And the archetype, each month I'm teaching on the archetypes of Venus and the signs, and the class series includes bonus content of all the astrological signs. But I'm teaching live on Libra, Scorpio, Sag, Capricorn, and Aquarius. So you can follow her transits in your own chart, and then we apply things to your own natal chart for that class. And it's not too late to join us. If you want to join, we have our next class on the 27th of September for Venus and Scorpio. And then this new moon actually is set to follow the very final Libra, Scorpio, or Libra Aries eclipses in the cycle, and that will be next year on March 29th. And what's interesting about this March 29th eclipse is that it happens with Mercury retrograde on the North Node, with Venus retrograde on the North Node. And the node has already moved into Virgo and Pisces. So the North Node is in Pisces, conjunct Saturn, with Venus retrograde conjunct the North Node. And this is the last time in the eclipse cycle that both Saturn and Neptune will be in the sign of Pisces. And this is the last of the Aries Libra eclipses. So we get the new moon in Libra, right? The new start of relationship, which is a relationship to ourself through the lens of relationship to other, without we're in that compare and contrast energy. And then we have this new beginning in Aries on the North Node, which is a culmination of the past, because we can see all the planets that pertain. The ruler of the South Node, is on the North Node retrograde, right? So there's something being brought forward through these eclipses, through these cycles, that is culminating in a whole initiation journey, that once you've completed the journey, and I would say that this new moon is the completion of that journey, you're done. That's it. Pluto is firmly in Aquarius, never going back to Capricorn in our lifetime. Once Neptune and Saturn leave Pisces, they will never come back together in Pisces in our lifetime. Saturn will 30 years later from now return to Pisces, but Neptune will never in our lifetime return to Pisces and be there with Saturn. They will be together in Aries for some time. They'll still have transits, but Neptune is the ruler of Pisces and has to do with our spiritual quest for higher, I would say, divine love, unconditional love, right? And all the ways in which we, in our human experience, are facing illusion and delusion of the things that, and structures and people and systems and beliefs and everything that seems to try to replace that one calling of the soul to its divine nature. And it can, I think, while we're human beings, like, our our needs for things, our desires for things can replace that desire of source to return to source. And we can temporarily get caught up in a fantasy reality of how we want to be feeling about our life and relationships, and all these different things. I very interestingly received a message in my dreams last night that was sort of pointing in that way to like, you think you can seek freedom through this external experience. But if the freedom is coming at the cost of the body, like if the freedom requires the body, it's not actually freedom. It's bound to that condition of the body, and so thus it's not real freedom. And it was really pointing me towards a deeper truth of how I want to be in relationship in terms of divine love. And so one of the themes that I'm exploring, the revolution, the heart of the revolution in love evolution is about how we relate to deep intimacy and connection and divine love, right? But then there are ways in which we are conditioned to believe that these are the things that we get that give us freedom to express that or to experience that in relationship. And actually, it's not really true about like if it requires the body, it's not really divine and unconditional love because there's a conditioned reality around it. But anyway, this eclipse that happens in March is the last in this Aries Libra. And similar to the full moon that we had in Pisces, you'll notice where the nodes are here in March, 27 degrees. And if we go back to the eclipse that we had just this last week, and you'll notice where, you know, Neptune is. So this is our journey, right? In between these eclipses to the next eclipse cycle. And the very nature of this equinox is to kick us off into that initiation of Libra, to take us into the place where we actually are hearing the calling of the soul. We're facing the challenge, the last quarter square, the challenge that we're being initiated into, the crisis of consciousness. We're receiving the information, the messages, and opening ourselves to the curiosity in particular. Uh, and I'm really talking about the emotional curiosity as well. To be curious about what we're feeling and how it's connected to a particular way of thinking that is aligned with a way that we've been believing ourselves to be suppressed, disempowered, filled with guilt, filled with shame, unworthy of whatever it is that we desire, unworthy of what we, are calling for in our lives, and to really begin to question that with this equinox, to question and to answer the call. And, our relationship to the divine, whether you have a practice of praying to God or whether you have a practice of manifestation or whatever you do for yourself to feel, and maybe you have a connection to the earth. Maybe you have a connection to your own physical embodiment. But it's always a call and response. It's always a relationship inside to the outside. There is that reciprocity that's constantly aligning us to what's true inside, but often through what we are seeing reflecting outside. I had a really beautiful session with a colleague, and right away when I recognized her, I felt like, oh, this woman is so connected to her intuition, and she's so connected to her channel and to, the her being was really reflecting back to me actually quite something that has always been true about me, receiving information, following inner guidance. I've always, like, some of those times in my life where I've just known I had to go, I had to do something, I had to make a choice. And you know I knew that if I'm, like when I knew I needed to leave my banking career, I knew at the time that if I talked to my husband about it, if I told him what I wanted to do, he would be like freaking out about how are we going to pay the bills and what are we going to do? And I felt such a deep calling inside of myself. I woke up one morning and I was just like, I have to go. And I faxed in my resignation, and that was it. And like he called at lunchtime to see how my day was going, and they said Michelle doesn't work here anymore. And it was like a shock to him. But I had to trust myself in that moment to know exactly. And the way things unfolded that day, if I hadn't quit at that exact time, I wouldn't have received a call from a friend, that I wouldn't have gone, with her in the car to San Francisco. And I met my very first independent financial client right that afternoon. Like, it was just like the universe was saying, yes, you listened, you answered the call, and here you go. You're on your journey. You don't know how you're going to do it. You don't know how you're going to, you know. And I remember talking to my dad, and he was like, well, how are you going to, how are you going to pay the bills? And like, I couldn't have thought about those things, because answering the call internally was requiring me to have an open-mindedness about things that I could never have known. And I ended up building a business that I was able to sell a few years later when I was ready to be a full-time financial advisor. It was amazing. And it had to do with that trust of my innermost being that I listened to and that I followed. And it's not always a logical trust. It's not always a framework where, of course, if we tell others there, that, you know, can create doubt, and it can erode the sense of empowerment or certainty in something that is greater than ourselves. And I really have learned that, um, from the times in my life when I've lost track of that part of myself, which was reflected back to me recently, of that trusting. And a part of where we can lose track of that is in becoming um, highly emotional, right? Highly reactive to our external circumstances, highly conditioned by the past and by what hasn't worked in the past, and by what we have been struggling with. And I think what this equinox in particular is allowing us to do is really to release that in a very big way. And by allowing ourselves a new start to a very specific initiation of life, we can experience something like grace, carrying us through this next 6 months between this equinox to the March 29th eclipse. And I think that we will find our lives greatly transformed and changed in ways that we could not even imagine at this point in time, but that are exactly as they should be. I can see the little mystic rectangle on the grand trine between, um, the earth planets. There's such a deep reshaping of the structures of our lives happening at such a powerful internal level that um, this is bound to be kind of the foundation point of our new beginning in the spring, in March, when we see where we are after all of this change. So may this turning of the seasons bring great blessing into your life. May it bring um, profound curiosity for what is blossoming, both in the healing of your emotional body, in the release of the past. May it bring a overcoming of past conditions through an undoing and a rebirth that allows for more of who you are, more of the truth of who you are, to become so present and available to you in your life as a guide, internally and externally. And may the relationships that you desire, may the callings of your heart, may all that you wish to occur in your work, in your home, in your family, in your relationships, may all of the healing that you wish to occur in your body, in your physical environment, may it happen in such a way that you can be a testament to the miracle of change, of God, of life, of time itself, pushing us forward from an evolutionary perspective to become more of the love that we are. So, my friends, thanks so much for listening to this special report. I hope you have a blessed equinox, and I look forward to tuning in with you again. As always, if you liked this video, give it a thumbs up. Leave me a comment if you want to leave some flowers or hearts or stars in the emoji box if there's no words. If there's words, I always love hearing your heart. Thank you so much for everything you share with me. It means the world to me, and I hope that this is a blessing to you and to your life. Bye for now.